In 1998, Bachmann Trains unveiled something extraordinary. HO scale steam locomotives had previously been limited to cheesy plastic models or expensive imported brass, but this was a high-quality plastic locomotive with all the detail of a brass one. This was the Bachmann Spectrum 280 consolidation. It's hard to overstate how far ahead of its time this model was. On most plastic steam locomotives in the late 90s, all the piping and many other details were molded in one piece, while on the Spectrum they're all separately applied scale-size parts. Many cheaper engines didn't even have cab interiors, while the Spectrum had a fully detailed cab with crew figures. Factory paint jobs were often quite lazy, but the Spectrum had sharp, accurate lettering, and even the tiny builder's plate is readable under a magnifying glass. It proved for the first time that plastic model trains could look just as good as brass, and for a small fraction of the cost. The differences in the Spectrum model weren't just cosmetic either. It used a completely new mechanism with a flywheel-equipped motor that drove the wheels through an unusual toothed belt system. This is actually the second one of these that I've had. The first was a newer version that I kit-bashed into a 262 Prairie, which some of you may remember. To be clear, I am not going to do that with this one. This is an older one that I bought very cheap, disassembled and not working, and I managed to get it running by swapping in most of the Prairie's drivetrain. The whistle is missing, but apart from that it's in pretty reasonable shape, and for the price I paid I really can't complain. The model was based on a standard Baldwin catalog engine from the turn of the century or so, and it looks reasonably close to a lot of different prototypes. My model is lettered as Union Pacific number 721, and while I couldn't find any pictures of that exact locomotive, I did find one of 749, presumably part of the same class, which looks quite similar. The Spectrum 280 was a smash hit, and as a result, the model train market in the early 2000s was soon flooded with highly detailed plastic steam locomotives. Bachmann's Spectrum product line led the charge, with the 280 joined by a 440, two versions of a 460, a 282, as well as numerous others that I haven't acquired examples of yet. Other manufacturers followed, with Proto 2000 offering several very impressive entries, such as their absolutely superb USRA 060, which was even more detailed than the Spectrum models. Unfortunately, this golden era of HO scale steam couldn't last forever. In the early 2010s, DCC and sound started to become the norm, and as a result, prices went up and sales went down respectively. Bachmann responded by discontinuing almost their entire Spectrum product line and rebranding the few surviving engines as Blue Box standard line models, with corresponding reductions in detail and quality to fit them into a lower price point. The one that suffered by far the most from this was the 460, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I have a lot of opinions on that. If you haven't seen my rant about that, it's not worth getting into here, but suffice to say, the current 460 is a pale shadow of its former self, and if you want one, you're best off finding an older Spectrum model. The only HO steam engine currently being sold under the Spectrum brand is the 210 Decapod. It is very nice, but it's only available with DCC and sound, and as a result, it's quite expensive. However, rather poetically, there is one model that survived all of this virtually unscathed, and it's the 280, the original one. Although it no longer carries the Spectrum name, the model itself remained virtually identical when it was moved over to the standard line. The only thing it lost was the sprung driver axles, but that was arguably an improvement. What we're left with is a beautifully detailed, smooth-running model that looks at home in just about any North American paint scheme and isn't absurdly expensive, and that's pretty much what this thing was designed to be from the start. Now, having said that, like any model locomotive, it has some quirks. The combination of the large motor, belt drive, and relatively fast gearing means that it draws a bit more current than most modern HO scale locomotives, around 0.2 amps. I've installed a DCC decoder with back EMF in it, which greatly improves the slow speed performance, but it actually burned out the first decoder that I put in. I eventually figured out that something on the DCC quick plug circuit board was causing the problem, so I ended up taking that out and just hardwiring the decoder. It seems to be fine now, but I probably shouldn't jinx it by saying that. Anyway, folks, that's about it. Despite being built almost exactly the same for 24 straight years, the Bachmann HO280 is still quite a decent locomotive for the money, and certainly a beautiful one. Now, a lot of people do trash on Bachmann, including me, Bachmann, but every now and then they'll come out with a product that really is fantastic, and this is one of those things. I'm not sure exactly yet how this one's going to fit into the Westport and Shelter Cove Railway lore, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. Anyway, folks, for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.